Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist parents, guardians, and students who are having issues surrounding special education. Specifically in this video, I'm discussing eligibility for a 504 plan and the accommodations that are included. 504 plans, who's eligible for those? So let's discuss that. 504 plans are actually codified in federal statutes, specifically the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504. In this federal statute, it gives protections to students in the public school and charter school settings from any type of discrimination due to a disability. So, and again, like I stated, it's federal law. And so that states the minimum accommodations and requirements. Sometimes different states will have additional requirements, but it's pretty rare for a 504 plan. Sometimes that happens with IEPs, but 504s are normally pretty straightforward in federal statutes. So let's talk about who's eligible. So age range, let's talk about that first. So any child between the ages of 3 and 22 that are in the public school or charter school setting. So 3 may be in the student may be in pre-K, and then if a child qualifies for special education, sometimes they're allowed extended time in the secondary education setting, and so they don't have to graduate until age 21 or 22. So as long as they're in the public school setting in secondary education, they would be eligible for a 504 plan. And like I said, and also ages 3, if they're in maybe like a Head Start program or any type of pre-K program. Now, let's talk about where or locations of where a student would be eligible. So again, it's in the public school or charter school setting. Private schools do not have to adhere to this. Like I said, some states may, expand the scope of the 504 plan, but in general, only students in the public school or charter school setting are eligible for a 504 plan. Again, I've said it probably, 10 times already in this video, but it's federal. So all 50 states must comply. So if you're in any of the 50 states or your student, their ages 3 to 22, in their public school or charter school setting, they then would be eligible if they meet the requirements. So now let's go into what the federal statutes say that make a student eligible. So the 504 plan is created to protect students from discrimination because of their disability. But it goes a little bit further than that. So within the 504 statutes, it states that a student must have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. So in the classroom, if there's something physically or mentally, a disability or a diagnosis that would limit a major life activity, then they would qualify and be eligible for 504 accommodations. So let's kind of break that down because it's really in 2 parts. So first, they have to have a physical or mental impairment. So if you take your child to a healthcare provider or some type of therapy and they are diagnosed with a mental or physical impairment, maybe they have an anxiety disorder or depression disorder, or so that would be more along the lines of a mental impairment, physical impairment. Maybe they have some type of disease or they are unable to walk or communicate or hear, things like that. Those are more physical impairments. So, but just because, I want to make this clear, just because there is an impairment doesn't automatically make them eligible for a 504. The parent or student or the 504 team has to show that because of this impairment, it substantially limits major life activities, like we said, somehow in the classroom, or actually anywhere within the school setting. So what would substantially limit that? So maybe if you have, let's talk maybe mental impairments. So if you have anxiety or depression around exams, you could have accommodations that would allow the student to take an exam in a different location where it's nice and quiet. Maybe they have extended time if they feel very anxious. Maybe there's a contact person, some staff member at the school that they can go to that would help sort of regulate them to be calm and to go back into the classroom. Physical impairments, this might mean if someone's in a wheelchair, there would need to be accommodation so that they had extra room coming in and out. If they were going to a physical education classroom, their instruction or participation would definitely look different than someone who is able to run around and comply with all of the instruction from that teacher. The other thing to remember for eligibility for a 504 plan that I think sometimes is misunderstood. A 504 plan does not have to be special education. That's typically more of an IEP, meaning they're not going to be pulled out to have special education. So maybe they're not cognitively at grade level, so the instruction needs to be at a different level for them, or they may need accommodations in order for them to fully understand the coursework. A 504 can do that. However, eligibility for that is mainly for just simple accommodations within that environment. So like I said, leaving to take a test in a different location, maybe something around the room, more space for someone who may be bound by a wheelchair, things like that. Also, 504 plans to be eligible, you can also have impairments that affect things like traveling from class to class, sitting in the cafeteria, extracurricular activities, for school, after school programs, things like that can also be included in a 504. So 504 really is, to be eligible, it's any impairment within the school environment. It's not just how your teacher instructs, their math lesson or reading lesson. So I think those are important things to remember when you're thinking about eligibility for a student for a 504 plan. So it's any impairment that would substantially limit them while they're at school or going to school or leaving school. So this also could include transportation. So these are all things you want to think about. To summarize, to be eligible for a 504 plan, the student just has to have some type of impairment, which we had discussed can be diagnosed by a healthcare provider, and it has to substantially limit some type of major life activity. So like being in the classroom, taking tests, transitioning from room to room, going into the cafeteria, extracurriculars. If any of those things are substantially limited, then the student would be eligible then for a 504 and accommodations. Also, 504 plans are typically good for up to 3 years. However, if a student has some type of impairment that is healed or corrected or they no longer have, so there's no longer any type of substantial limitation, then they would lose their eligibility. So that's something to remember. If there was some type of accident that left the student injured, but through rehabilitation, that limitation has healed itself, then they would no longer be eligible for a 504 plan. So that's just something to kind of remember. If you would like any more information on 504 plans or eligibility, or you'd like to contact us for a consultation, you can check out our contact information, which is in the description below this video.